First reading is from the book of Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, verses 1 and 2 and 6 through 9. So now, Israel, give heed to the statutes and ordinances that I am teaching you to observe, so that you may live to enter and occupy the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. You must neither add anything to what I command you, nor take anything away from it, but keep the commandments of the Lord your God with which I am charging you. You must observe them diligently, for this will show your wisdom and discernment to the peoples who, when they hear all of these statutes, will say, surely this great nation is a wise and discerning people. For what other great nation has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is whenever we call to him? And what other great nation has statutes and ordinances as just as this entire law that I am setting before you today? But take care and watch yourselves closely, so as neither to forget the things that your eyes have seen, nor to let them slip from your mind all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and to your children's children. The word of God. Let's read responsively Psalm 15. Lord, who may dwell in your tabernacle? Who may abide upon your holy hill?
Those who lead a blameless life and do what is right, who speak the truth from their hearts.
They do not slander with the tongue. They do no evil to their friends. They do not cast discredit upon a neighbor.
In their sight, the wicked are rejected, but they honor those who fear the Lord. They have sworn upon their health and do not take back their word.
They do not give their money in hope of gain, nor do they take bribes against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be overthrown. The second reading is from the letter of James, addressed to the church, chapter 1, verses 17 to 27. Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of his own purpose, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruits of his creatures. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror, for they look at themselves and on going away immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. The word of the Lord. Please stand for the gospel acclamation.
According to St. Mark, the 7th chapter, beginning at the first verse. You may be seated. Now, when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands. That is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders. And they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash it. And there are also many other traditions that they observe: the washing of cups, pots, and bronze kettles. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands? He said to them, Isaiah prophesied rightly about you hypocrites. It is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition. Then he called the crowd again and said to them, listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile. But the things that come out are what defile. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
And now we will have the children's service. And as probably you know, we don't have a lot of children in here. But we would like for all of my children to come up. Today I'm going to do a fable. It's called King Lion and the Beetle. King Lion looked in the mirror. What a beautiful and noble creature I am, he said. I will go forth to show my devoted subjects that their leader is every inch a king. The king put on his robes of state, his large jeweled crown, and all of his gold and silver medals. As he walked down the roads of his kingdom, everyone who saw him bowed to the ground. Yes, yes, said King Lion, I deserve this respect from my people, for truly I am every inch a king. There was a tiny beetle standing near the road. When the king saw him, he cried, Beetle, I command you to bow low before me. Your royal majesty, said the beetle, I know that I'm small, but if you look at me closely, you'll see I am making a bow. The king leaned over. Beetle, he said, you are so hard to see down there, I'm still not sure that you're bowing. Well, your majesty, said the beetle, please look more closely. I assure you that I am indeed bowing. The king leaned over a little farther. Now the robes of state, the large jeweled crown, and all of the gold and silver medals had made King Lion very top-heavy. Suddenly, he lost his balance and fell on his head. With a great roar, he rolled into a ditch on the side of the road. The frightened beetle scurried away. From head to foot, every inch of King Lion was covered with mud. The moral of this story is, it is the high and mighty who have the longest distance to fall. And Wanda's moral is, when you act better than other people, you will come down. Okay. I'm a nervous wreck. I don't know why I'm a nervous wreck, but I am. And I've been praying for days for God to give me the words to say this morning. And right now, I'm not so sure. I prayed right as I got here. So I'm going to do it. But the good thing about it is I'm standing in front of my people. I got my good friends here. I've got my church friends here. They're my family. So no matter what I say up here, God is with me because I'm with you. Now, in today's lesson, the gospel lesson, we see Jesus, and I'll give you a little history of what's happened before this starts. Jesus has already fed the 5,000. The people saw this miracle in front of them, and they know that something's going on with this man because he is the one that did the miracle. After he fed the 5,000, he let the people go, and he sent his disciples across the lake, and he needed some rest time, and he went up on the mountain. While he was on the mountain, he looks down and he sees his disciples, and they're in the boat, and they're having problems. There's a storm come up over the lake, and they are afraid, and he knows it. So he just walks right out there. He walks right across the lake, and he helps his disciples. And then they go to the other side of the lake. And he's still needing some rest. He sends his disciples out. They do good things, and he is resting. But the people that have seen him on the other side, the people that were fed, well, they needed to be with him still. So when they found out that he was on the other side of the lake, they just walked around the lake. And on their journey around there, they got all their sick, and they brought all their sick to him. And he blessed them. And once again, he tried to rest. That's where we are. When we talk about Jesus talking to the crowd, always in the background, there's some Jewish leaders lurking around. On this particular day, it was the Pharisees and scribes. The Pharisees were from Jerusalem. They were from the synagogue in Jerusalem. And the reason that they were there with Christ is because they wanted to find something to trip him up, to make him falter, to make him say or do something that was wrong. And they found it. While they were standing there, they looked over at Jesus' disciples, and those disciples were eating. And not only were they eating, but they were eating with unclean hands. They had not washed their hands. Now, we know about washing hands because we know about germs and the spread of disease. But back then, they didn't have that. So back then, they didn't know about spreading germs. So what the Pharisees were seeing is that they were not doing a tradition that was in the Jewish synagogue. The elders in the synagogue always washed their hands before they did anything religious, before they ate. And not only did they wash their hands, but they washed their food from the market. They washed their pots, their pans, their cups. But this wasn't something that came down from God. This was something that was a tradition. So they go up to Jesus, because they've tripped him up now, because this tradition is not being done. And they go up to Jesus and they say to him, you're a holy man, supposedly. Why are the people that follow you not washing their hands? And Jesus looked at him and he said, you know what, you're right. They're not washing their hands. But Isaiah was also right, because Isaiah prophesied. And where he's saying the words of God, God says, these people honor me with their words, but their hearts are far from me. They teach only human rules. Their worship is false. There were a lot of traditions in the church in their church and our church. Pretty much, if man says it, it's not always of God. Not only did we see it then, but we see it now. After Jesus talked to them, he turned to the crowd, who was eager to hear everything he had to say. And he says, listen and understand this. Nothing outside of you coming in can defile you, can make you unclean. It's what comes out from your heart that saddens me, that makes me see that you are unclean. What you do or say in any situation comes from your heart. Then he went to his disciples because he wanted to make sure that everybody knew this message. He went to his disciples and they asked him, what were you teaching out there? And he says, nothing like food that goes into your mouth. It doesn't go into your heart. It's in your stomach. The only thing that can come out of your heart that will make you unclean is evil things. This day and age, we have a lot of evil things coming into our heart. A lot. Because we have better ways of finding it. Back in Jesus' time, the people only had their community that they knew a lot about. The Jewish people had their community. The Gentiles had their communities. And that was about all they knew about. They might hear some stories from some travelers from another town, but they didn't know very much about what was going on. So all of the things that they were worried about, all the stuff that was coming into them was only from the people around them. Now there's us. Think about all the things that come into us that can change us, that can make us different. We have TV, radio. I know I'm old. Radio. We have a phone 24/7 in front of our face. We have computers. We have internet, Google, X, TikTok, YouTube. We can get news at any hour of the day and night. So our news and our world, where their world was like this, our world is so big, I do not have arms long enough to show you. Not only do we know what's going on in our community, in our state, and our country, but we know what's going on in the Gaza Strip, in Israel. We know what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. We know what the Chinese are doing. We know about North Korea, the Arabian states. We know all of this, and it comes in, and it is scary. And on top of that, we're sitting in a year that's an election year. And this year, we have two sides against each other. Half of us go this way, half of us go this way, and we all hate the other half. That's what it looks like when it comes in. That's what we're feeling. Our children are getting shot in school, and we know about it. People are going to concerts and getting killed, or Boston marathons, and we know about it. And all of that comes into us, it has two ways of going. We can get mad, angry, lash out, tell our friends we're not going to be friends with them anymore because they're not going to vote for who I'm voting for. Or we can love God, pray, Send money. Go to our elected officials and tell them that they need to do more. Those are some of the things that we do when it comes out the right way. But we can't get angry, and we can't hate each other. There's some churches right now here in the United States. Back in the day, the Jewish people didn't really care whether they had Gentiles in their congregations. In fact, they kind of shunned the Gentiles. They weren't Jewish, so they're different than us. So we don't need them in our churches because they're different. We don't like what they do. They don't worship our God. We have the same thing going on today. We have churches that are busting up because there's people they don't want in their church. And that's basically what it is. Thank goodness I go here. Thank goodness you people took me in when I needed a church. We can't do that. So, but you know what? God gave us instructions on how to deal with this stuff. He told us exactly what we needed to do to be good Christians. Exactly what to do. He gave us the 10 Commandments. And I'm going to go over that. And I have a adventure Bible for young readers, and this is my favorite book ever because it breaks everything down for young people. And you know I am young. So I'm going to read the 10 Commandments to you and tell you exactly what you need to do in these troubled times. You may not love anyone or anything more than you love God. You may not worship or put more importance on any person or thing other than God. You must worship only the Lord, not your parents, not a friend, not a movie star, nor a sports hero, not a car or a boat or a skateboard, nothing more than God. You may not swear. Use God's holy name only in a loving way, never to express anger or frustration. One day of your week should be set aside for rest and the worship of God. Work 6 days of the week only. You need a special day set aside to relax and meet with other Christians. Be respectful to your parents. Love them, and the Lord will reward you with a long life. You may not hate other people. Don't ever think of hurting someone else in any way. Keep your thoughts and actions pure. Sex is a gift of God to married couples. You may not take and keep anything that doesn't belong to you. You may not tell lies, especially when that lie will hurt someone else. You may not be jealous of what others have. You may not be jealous of your friend's new toy or clothes or the big house your neighbor lives in. Be satisfied with what you have. All we need to do is love God and love our neighbor. Love God and love our neighbor. Amen.